everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Nala Halfbean. I am the founder of Yoga Avec Moi, and today we are going to cover a huge topic called generational trauma. So I recently posted a short clip video on my IGTVs on Instagram, and I received a lot of feedback and a lot of interactions, and so I thought I would take this time to actually extend this video and make it a little bit longer so that I can go a little bit more in depth and answer these questions and kind of consolidate all the things that we were talking about. And I will also leave a link down below of the IGTV if you want to check it out. But essentially, I started with this. I was talking to actually my mom about generational trauma, and I was trying to explain to her what generational trauma is. And the way I was talking about it was that, I was like, how global warming, why global warming is super important? And she's like, why? And I was like, because, when ice melts, like sediments, there's different layers within sediments, in the rocks. So you can see okay, this was from this era, this was from this era, all of these things. In ice, you can see the same thing. But the good thing about rocks is that rocks stay solid, but ice will melt. So let's say, for instance, if there was an era in which the pollution was really bad, or there was toxic waste going into the air, there was monoxide or carbon dioxide, or excess levels or imbalance levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide, various different things that could have happened due to the climate of that time gets trapped in these layers of ice, right? And all the infectious diseases and particles and bacteria and viruses, the plethora of things that end up in that layer once the ice melts, that will be released into the water, it will start to melt, or into the air and into the animals, and then we eat the animals, and then the animals, other animals eat the other animals, and then we eat the animals. So, so many animal eating. And basically, all of this, whole cycle, it being in the air and all these things, it could really expose us to things, viruses, bacteria, and types of chemicals that we are not equipped to deal with anymore, or ever. Maybe this was way, way, way back in the time, right? Depending on how deep the ice is. And so I was basically saying that generational trauma is kind of like that, in this sense that, specifically in this sense that our bodies are kind of like the sediments, where it stores information that has happened before. So for instance, I was giving an example of my mom. If she experienced a fright in her first pregnancy, all that sort of emotions and things would be trapped in her physical body, so that when the second baby comes, or when the third baby comes, I'm the third baby, by the way. I get a lot of the baggage. When the third baby comes, you kind of have the stored emotional feelings of your mom from the first, from the second, and that kind of builds my DNA. That becomes my sediment. And so if I were to go through life and I were to do some healing work, I'm going to hit that bubble. I'm going to hit that iceberg, where if the ice melts, it's going to release all these things, right? So in a human being, all those emotions will start to release and kind of basically erupt in my body. So suddenly I will discover or observe that I'm feeling so much fear or anxiety or terror, or worried about my baby, and I've never had a child before. All of these different things could come up as either a memory or literally a physiological convulsion. It's really what's the word? It really takes hold of you. So it's not something gentle. So when something like that happens suddenly in the midst of nowhere, where you don't know kind of what's happening, but you're having a panic attack, something in your environment must have triggered that memory, triggered your genes to kind of react and respond in that way, that those ice little pockets are released, or those viruses in the icebergs in your body, which are emotions, these emotions get released. And so if there's any emotion that our older generations, they have not processed yet, which is a lot of survival emotions, like fear, like, you know, like intense fear or horror or terror or things like that, those are going to be things that's going to be trapped in our bodies and just like waiting for them to like erupt, or like be a landmine somebody just touches on and then like, you know, you explode. So in this sense, like generational trauma is kind of like hidden. And so on a genetic factor, like you can actually observe this in epigenetics. Like some people are more prone to like addiction or eating disorders or suicide even, for various different things, or depression or mental health issues. And you can find those in the genes. We know that already. Scientists already know that. But what I wanted to really spend more time talking about is, one, if in addition to the genetics, there's other also ways that if you knew nothing about your past, like you're adopted, or and you don't know anything about your blood family, or like what happened from that time, or in their conditions, and in those countries, in those cultures, all those things, still there are ways in which your environment could also pass down to you generational trauma. So there's many ways in which we can like basically have generational trauma in us. So what I want us to spend more time talking about in today's video is more on like how that happens. So let's say, for instance, there's a lot of studies that have shown for Holocaust survivors, if like a child has a parent or a grandparent who has been through the Holocaust, and that is not necessarily a genetic sort of thing, right? But of course it's stored in the body. So there is that aspect of genetics there. However, this is more in terms of, they've discovered that in these studies where they've noticed that people who have children, who are children of Holocaust survivors, they have PTSD just by the mere telling of the story of what happened to them in the concentration camps, or what their parents experienced, or their grandparents experienced, whoever it is that like had kind of like these circumstances like that affected them. Just by merely telling their life story, if they were still in the PTSD, which, I mean, let's be real, this was like an atrocious global systemic violence sort of like act, right? Or event or period of time. And these types of like emotions are not kind of within the regular domain of what humans can process. Like, you know, if I'm sad, like I can process it, you know, like, you know, think about like difficulties, I overcome it. But like something like the Holocaust, which is like inherently not within the nature of human nobility, something like that happening, and happening on such a wide level, that kind of imprint is like, is hectic. It's like I breathe. I can't breathe as well when I think of something like that. Nor is it normal to be able to process that. So it's not like you get a gold star if you're like, oh, it didn't affect me. Not really. It was like a hectic event. So I mean, these sort of things like oh my gosh, people can really like overcome like challenges and difficulties, of course. But like a majority of people, if they're not actively like really trying to heal themselves or process, or maybe there's actually going to be a time where you can't, there's only so much that you can process, and you just kind of like have to live with a certain state, or just expect that certain things happen, which is still work. Like that is process, right? Then those sort of emotions would be trapped in your body. And then also the way you recount your story to your child is going to be in that same traumatized state. Something that happened to you 30 years ago could, in this moment, get you the same response, the same tears, the same anger. Literally, your blood will boil just as much in that moment of recounting the story, because your mind is in a loop of a story and never kind of like came out of it, right? But generational trauma is a little bit different in the sense that that's like in an individual when they go through like hardships and stuff. But generational trauma is kind of like if something atrocious like that happened, and any elder recounts that story to you, however they process that sort of situation, whether they saw it as, okay, I'm gonna see the nobility of humankind, like in the concentration camps, I saw so much love, so much things, even though there was all these hardships and we didn't know when we were gonna be killed, then like all of those things, if they saw it in like the positive light and they were really focused on that, and that's what they shared with the child of like, this is how you overcome difficulty, or this is how one goes through tests and difficulties. What the child sees is basically a parent going from point A to point B successfully. But if you're in that PTSD state where you're still feeling so challenged by that situation, and you tell the child that story, they're gonna literally take that as a package and just store it in their body. So whether you're telling stories, or whether, mostly I would like you to focus on things that have been shared with you, and to really take the time to kind of like process, is there something that somebody shared with you that was almost like a gift basket, where they just gave you a poo-poo of all these emotions that you never experienced, but now you carry within your body, your mind, your soul, either out of guilt, shame, victimhood, anger, resentment, and all these things. Like, and really there's no, I don't want people to think of like blame and shame and like guilt for, or anger towards the person that shared this to them, because it's not really their fault for having a wound, which, let's be real, when it comes to generational trauma, it's like, it's big stuff. It's not like little stuff. Or these could be like also cultural sort of things. Like, so the Holocaust was like a big global event sort of situation, and any sort of pockets like Japanese concentration camps, or like in Ireland, there was like a huge famine, or like the atrocities that happened within churches with like priests and like young children, or like in First Nations reserves, like residential schools. There's multiple different layers to this. And so these are like the big sort of things that can kind of happen. But I wanted to kind of like give an example of a smaller kind of like cultural generational trauma that is not so severe, but still has like a major impact. So this is going to be a personal story. So when it comes to, so it's very interesting when someone is going through, like, one should really take account as to what the mind kind of like brings up as like a memory, or what are your specific types of fears. One sort of thing that I noticed in my interactions with men is that if they're too good looking, I get a little scared. That I'm like, oh my God, not in the sense that I feel like they're gonna hurt me or anything like that, but I feel that my relationship is not going to be secure, or my relationship is not going to be as fortified, or I'm constantly going to be on the lookout for other women, or whether or not, or, you know, just like this whole fear. And so what was really interesting was at one point in therapy, as all therapists should have a therapist, one of the things that kind of were brought up was the fact that how scared I am of actually being with someone who's very attractive. And that actually was very interesting, because I like brought that out with my mom, and I was like, so yeah, this is so interesting. She's like, you know what? You actually have an aunt who was about to marry someone who was very attractive, and he was not of the same faith. And the family forbid for them to marry. And the guy was really upset. Like, he literally came to her parents' house and literally broke down and said, like, I'm gonna kill myself, I'm gonna die, like, there's no one else that I want to marry, and all these things. Still the parents were like, no. And then eventually they both remarried. They both married, and the man, like, even though he was married for like multiple years, at his deathbed, he was still saying the name of my aunt. And so this is kind of like a huge sort of generational sort of thing, where within my family's lore or idea of like someone who's really good looking is a danger, and is not is not someone who you can bring into the family, because that makes it unsafe. And this was not even a story that I was aware of, but it was a fear that kind of like happened, or like I was liking a guy and he was like so good looking and I was literally in the pit of my stomach. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to overcome myself. I've never felt like even though I'm like, I feel like I'm attractive and I can like, you know, be with him, but I was just feeling like I was unable to kind of like overcome that fear. And that's like something where like my therapist was helping me understand that, like, you know, this is something very specific to your family. And only upon discovering or asking questions did I realize that, oh, actually we have like major trauma there too. And so how that affects in my life is that I might not date or marry any attractive people. So let's be real, girls, okay? We all want that, right? So we want these kind of traumas to like resurface and to clear them out, because whether or not that's like, regardless of what the type of trauma is, whether it's a betrayal, whether it's a loss, whether it's addiction, whatever it is, we want to kind of thrive within our own right, within our own souls. So if my soul wants to like be with someone who's like very attractive, I'm gonna tell my soul, go, you go, girl, right? But if there's all this fright, like literal, like physical shaking to be with him, then that's not gonna be helpful, right? So these types of generational traumas are really helpful in the sense that really they help you like live your life like authentically and really according to what your soul desires, right? So that's something I think I really wanted to share when it comes to like generational trauma. Like there's so many different ways in which it can manifest in your life. All I would have to say, this is not a comprehensive video, but definitely take it as a step in where you can kind of like a stepping stone, where you can kind of like take all this information or like and start go looking in your own life or reading up a little bit more about the various different ways in which it could show up in your life. So for me, the thing that I am most interested in helping people kind of like heal themselves with is how these generational traumas like appear as like physical symptoms. So I know people who have anxiety because of like things that have happened in their family, or they have like eczema, like literally skin rashes, like from the atrocious things that have happened to their race, to their culture. And so that's something that like I really want to help people like heal from. And so what I did want to share is, not only did I want to like share all this information about generational trauma, and you're welcome to go, I encourage you to go and read more about it so that you can really live your like purpose and your authentic lives, because this could also stop you from actually pursuing a certain type of job, like understanding like certain types of things with money. Like money is not going to, like money in a family could be taboo, which doesn't allow you to go and pursue a certain type of career that you want to do, or various different things. It's just gonna like stop your life, right, from living your fullest. And let's be real, this life is short. We want good looking guys, we want the money, we want the desires, or whatever it is that we want. Like I think we should have the freedom to be able to explore them. Whether or not they're right for us, that's a whole different topic, right? But if that is truly what our soul really wants and desires, then, you know, these sort of veils need to be kind of like lifted. So what I did want to share, in addition to sharing this information, is that Yoga Avec Moi is starting a membership portal, and this is going to be something that we're going to cover probably in detail on an individual basis. So if there's something that you already know you're dealing with, the Yoga Avec Moi membership portal is one space that you could choose to heal those wounds and to like bring it up within a group setting and to kind of learn from not only your own wounds but also other people's wounds, because it's really beautiful to see like different family dynamics and their wounds, really, because they're really the patterns and the shapes that really shape us as human beings. But then if they're not real, or they're not really something that we any longer want to hold on to, that's something that you can be free from if you want. So I wanted to let you guys know that's one of the topics that we're going to cover in the Yoga Avec Moi membership. I will leave in the comments sections below like somewhere like where you can sign up for the membership portal. We talk about like really deep things. If you also wanted to like deepen your meditation practice, your breath practice, you wanted some assistance, or like just have a group of people to like grow together with. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but it's really beautiful and I highly recommend it. And especially during this COVID period of time, like it could be something that's really like nourishing and helpful for you. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that. There will be in the comment section below a blog a little bit more on the membership if you wanted to learn more. So if you like this video, like and subscribe to my channel. Please do leave me a comment on anything generational trauma related that you have learned, heard about, or anything that I said that was interesting to you. Please do let me know. I always love to hear what you say in the comments, and I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any. So yeah, follow us on our social medias. We post little clip it at videos like this, so come on Instagram. I'm usually there every day on my highlights, so if you want to see me without makeup, barefaced, that is also an opportunity for you. So yeah, it's lovely to have you here. If you're new, do subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. If yeah, hopefully you get to see more videos like this. Let me know if you want to see part 2 of generational trauma. So yeah, I'll see you next time.